Good evening and happy Monday to everyone. This is Erica Bishop, your host of Evolve and Elevate with Erica. And we are here again with you tonight for part three of unlocking your unshakable faith, your process, your progress, your momentum, your mastery. We are here with Spencer Combs for our final night. And we are so glad that you have been with us for the last couple of weeks. So, just to kind of let you in on what we're doing, this is a very special edition because this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you would like to get more understanding, to get more clarity, or even to get some strategies for you to yield the necessary results that you need. So, we have been talking about mindset, we have been talking about movement, and we're in a place of momentum right now as we get ready to go into the mechanics of it all. And again, Spencer has been so kind to allow us to just have truly a mastermind for the last 3 weeks. And tonight he was just on a call with New Zealand and he's here with us tonight. So he's been international today. And we really thank him for being here with us. And we really appreciate you all coming in on tonight. So I'm going to give Spence an opportunity to reintroduce himself to you again before we get into the last part and the last phase of this show. So Spencer, welcome and thank you for being here.
I am overjoyed and sad at the same time, knowing that this is going to be the last time we do this, or at least scheduled to do this. So it has been a huge pleasure. Um, my name is Spencer Combs. Spencer Combs Resources is the company. That's what the little elephant logo here is telling you that I'm from. I personally believe that professional development, right? The negotiation skills you want, the budgeting skills you want, the sales skills you want, all the things that you're looking to get on the professional end of your life always is going to come on the backside of the personal development, because at the end of the day, businesses don't grow, people do. And when you grow, so does your business, right? Businesses don't compete. The leaders of those businesses compete. So with that, I've spent the greater part of 2 decades now. We're going into our third, actually, developing systems, programs, frameworks. More recently, momentum and mastery to help those business leaders fast track their profitability, their productivity, and their purpose. So that's like my big little spiel there in the very beginning. But we're excited about bringing you the third piece to these pillars. Uh-oh.
I'm doing all kind of extra stuff over here, so y'all don't mind me. I'm trying to
We
multitask.
hear you moving the microphone around. We hear
Yeah,
it.
I'm sorry. We just doing a little extra over here. So let's kind of go, and I'm going to let you do your recap, and I'm going to kind of do a couple of takeaways from where we've been for the last couple of weeks. So we started with movement, and we talked about the drift and the drive, and what that looks like, and what that feels like, and then we got into the desire, the dream, the decision, and the stir, which was very, very pivotal for a lot of different things to get you to a place of true movement and to get out of that place of being stuck and stagnant. And then we went into mindset. And as you were building your framework, your unshakable framework, which is the movement, the mindset, and the mechanics, then we got into our flexibility, the belief system, our own level of accountability, how to be focused. And then the biggest question was that really took it home: what are you committed to?
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
That one stung a little bit. Like, what are you committed to?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah. It does actually. And let me give you a real a short thing about commitment, by the way, because this is how all this content continues to kind of unpack itself over time.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, as recently as this past weekend, when it comes to commitment, it carries with it the emotion of expectation.
Correct.
not hope. Interested people hope. Committed people expect, right?
Say it again for the people in the back.
Interested people hope, right? They show up. And I think we talked about
Mhm.
this last week. They show up and they just kind of hope. But when you close your eyes and think about something that you hope for and then close your eyes and expect, you're going to notice there's a physiological shift in your body.
It
There's
is.
an emotional shift in your body. And when you have a commitment level, there's expectation that comes along with it, which means you're going to be way more resilient. You're going to be able to move regardless of what's going on. You're going to find a way. And that's why, because you have an expectation that this is going to take place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Commitment and expectation were expectation for me. When I thought about that question, what are you committed to, and the expectation, and we talked about hope, you begin to put things into true action when it comes with expectation. Even though I don't see it yet, I'm going to move in that space. So this is my definition of faith. Faith is, and I got this from a pastor years ago, but I've said it so many times, so it's mine now. So faith is acting like a thing is so, even when it's not so, in order that it might be so.
Mm.
So when I think about expectation, that is the frame that I operate in, the mindset that I operate in, that once I've locked into that place of expectation, I'm going to move in that place of expectation because it's going to be what it is I expect for it to be.
Mm. So I think this would be a great place for me to just go ahead and start talking about some of the mechanics as we go, because,
Go right ahead, it's yours.
well, the thing is that at the base, right, there's 5 building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody goes back to the first one, we talked about there's 5 building blocks of the qualified champions framework, which is the
Mm-hmm.
mastery cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is the very first one. And purpose requires a mindset of commitment. All the things we're talking about, expectation. But the mechanics, the math, right, is an outcome, a clearly defined outcome. You have much better level of purpose when you are very clear on an outcome and then you commit to that. That gives you purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we even have to talk about outcomes, some people would say, well, what's the difference between an outcome and a goal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of times goals are not super measurable. They're supposed to be,
Correct.
right? But outcomes are very clear, very clearly defined,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it could be, I want to be in this position in this many years. I want to have this kind of car. I want to have this kind of an income. I want to have this kind of net worth, right? And by the way, money doesn't have to be the only way to measure, right? I'm
Right.
pretty sure, right? But I do know that money is usually one of the ways that you measure your value,
Mm-hmm.
your marketable value, not your professional value, not necessarily your personal value,
Correct.
right? So money is a way to measure that, but an outcome has to be clear. And a lot of times you ask people, what do you want to do? Like what do you want? And they'll give you things like, well, I want to make more money. Well, Erica, next time somebody says to you, I want to make more money,
Mm-hmm.
give them a $5 bill and tell them to get out your face because they got more money.
Correct.
The question is, how much,
Right.
right? Get clear on that number. Now, one of the things that we do, I have a process that I take people through, and we create what's called a price tag. So we
Mm-hmm.
literally go through different categories of life, right? Your personal expenses, what I call fluff money or fun money, right? We go through taxes, we go through savings and debt reduction, right? We list all that stuff out, and then we have a price tag for the year
Mm-hmm.
for your lifestyle. That could be an outcome because it's attached to a lifestyle. What do you want? Now, truthfully, if you did what we talked about 2 weeks ago with the whole momentum part of this,
Right.
you should have a very clear outcome that you want to have happen. There should be an anchor goal. It's 3 to 5 years out, which then means you can break it down for this next year, 2025. What's the outcome? What am I committed to? Is that making sense to you,
It
Eric?
it does, and I have a quick question because why do you believe that some people are so hesitant to set a clear goal, and do you believe it's because they don't think that they can make another decision later?
Fear, always, right? And fear is always going to carry one of two types of situations. It's either going to be I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be left alone or be alone, right? So
Right.
it's usually a relationship issue or a capability issue, right? So if they don't want to put a certain goal and then set that as their outcome, um, it's I may lose family over this conversation. I may lose my relationships, or I may be perceived as the wrong, as a different kind of person, which
Mhm.
therefore means I may get ostracized by a different kind of group, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of, especially when people are coming from one type of financial environment and they're going to another one,
Mhm.
there's a fear wrapped around that as to whether or not I'm going to be still accepted by my previous group.
So in other words, people are hesitant to change zip code, so to speak.
Mentally. Um,
Right.
and I actually just this morning in my daily text, so that anybody wants to be on the daily text, you just go to spencercombs.com/text. This morning's daily text said there's not a single top performer that hasn't had to leave a few friends or loved ones behind on their way to greatness. No matter how much you try to take them with you, they have to make the choice to either step up or step out.
That is correct.
Now that's one. It could be the relational issue. The
Correct.
other could be that I just don't know that I actually can pull this off. I
Okay.
don't know that I'm accuracy. Another way of saying it, by the way, this is great for prayer life. But another way of saying it is either you feel like there's a problem with power or there's a problem with presence,
That's good.
which means the most simple prayer you can make to ask the Lord for is, Lord, give me your power and give me your presence, because those are the only two things I need to deal with all this BS in my life.
Correct. Correct.
Right. So, but anyway, that's the issue. It's either I don't know that I have the power to pull this off, or
Mhm.
I'm going to lose some relationships with presence.
Right.
Um, and we do a lot more whenever we feel like we have both. If
Mhm.
that answers your question.
It does. It does.
Cool. Well, then, if you know exactly what you want, now we have a committed outcome. You've got a purpose. Now
Mhm.
the conversation comes into, well, the next step of the mechanics. You got a clearly defined outcome, right? Now we need to break it down into a plan. And plans usually need to have some kind of standards attached to them. We probably should come up with an example of some kind. So let's say we got a business, somebody's opening up a business, or they have a business, and they want to go from 100,000 to 250,000 in revenue. Let's just use that as an example. To get to 250, they're probably doing certain things that gets them to 100,000 right now. So how do we more than double where we are? We could, in fact, double up our efforts, right? If you're making X number of sales, let's say it takes you 20 sales to get to 100,000, and you say, well, I just need to now do, instead of 20, I need to be doing 50 because that's how I'm going to get to 250.
Mhm.
Um, that's sure. But there's multiple ways to do it, right? We could actually not only increase the number of sales, we could also increase the value per sale, and we can also increase the amount of time somebody buys in a year. So
Mhm.
there's different ways to optimize, but the plan needs to be broken down to some very specific standards. This is the part nobody likes because it takes math. right?
It does. And if you want to have money, you got to know how to do the math.
Yeah. Especially when we're talking about setting a higher number and we got to get there, right? But some of those things, it could be a number of new sales, but it could be that you have a high level of churn,
Right.
meaning we could probably do better if we could hold on to some of the people we already have, and it depends on the kind of business you have, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
insurance companies are having to make sure that they renew every 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also doing what they call rounding out the accounts, meaning if you got your car there, that they also want your house and they want your boat. They want all the
Right.
right, this concept of bundling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always been there. They just now got a cool little phrase for it,
Right.
right? Those are ways to increase their production. So we measure those types of things. Maybe it's a conversion rate discussion, but you have to sit down and essentially break down. And I know this is like super unsexy. Like people are listening to this like, ugh, this is gross, right? Everybody loves to talk about want to keep their head in the clouds and talk about mindset because, we got to have the mindset. Look, you can be the poorest person in the clouds. You got to get into the mechanics. So what is it going to take? And I don't care if you got a table at the flea market. How many widgets do I need to put out here? How many people need to get out in front of me? How many am I selling per hour? How many conversations am I having in that hour? How many of those can I turn over? Right? We come up with some standards, a plan to generate movement, and that's what we focus on. We focus
Right.
on our plan. I'm going to post on social media X amount of times. I'm going to run this ad. I'm going to drive that, right? So we have to have a plan for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've learned as you go into the next part, those who have hit certain what we call milestones or deliverables, those that hit those milestones, those are the ones who know their numbers because they understand their client, they understand their target market, they understand their audience, they understand their full demographics, and they know exactly what it is that they need to do. And when you think about people like, oh my God, how did this person go from 5 figures to 7 figures to 8 figures? They dig into the numbers, the mechanics of it.
Mm-hmm. Which is the natural segue into number 3.
Right.
Right. So if we're focusing on the plan, we now have priorities.
Mm-hmm.
X number of conversations, X number of presentations, X number, right? The retention rates at X%, right? We got all these measurables that we're going to hit. Well, if you really want to step into your power, you got to own all of it. And what you're really owning, number 3 in this conversation, is resources. You got to be accountable for your resources. These are tracking mechanisms. And here's a principle everybody needs to know. Man, you guys are quiet tonight.
It's all right.
They're all quiet tonight. You're like, oh, this is boring. No, it's actually super interesting when you get down into it, right? The principle is this: the higher the performer,
Mm-hmm.
the more often they measure.
Correct.
Right?
That's good. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give you a little anecdotal story as to point this out, especially with you being in South Carolina. All 3 of my daughters graduated from Dutch Fork High School.
Okay.
You know where that is, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dutch Fork. Okay. Now I don't know, but I'm going to assume that they still have a decent high school football program.
Mm-hmm.
In the time that my daughters were there, they were state champions multiple years in a row. Because when Coach Knotts showed up, everything changed, and he took them to the state championship constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what I was amazed with is that when I went to a football game, because one of my daughters was in band, so I went to the football game because she was at the game to support her. I looked at them and I saw them with tents. I'm talking about the football team. They had tents down there and they had tablets and they were reviewing plays from the previous time they were on the field.
Yes.
So if the offense was on the field, the defense was looking at tablets and readjusting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is high school. Like I expect that from the NFL. But this is high school.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons the high school did so well is they didn't wait till the halftime for the locker room discussion about what we're going to adjust. They were literally doing it in between plays.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have any kind of level of power in your business where you control what's going on and you're moving things forward, you need to know what you have and you need to own it. So the mindset of accountability now gets married to resources. So
Correct.
resource management becomes the tool. This
Right.
is the mechanical part of it. How do I manage my resources? Well,
Right.
there's three major resources that I talk about. There's a ton of other resources too, but the three biggest ones, especially in business, is people,
Correct.
time,
Mm-hmm.
and energy.
Yes.
Energy is not the easiest one to measure, but it is in fact one you need to measure.
Mm-hmm.
So people, time, and energy. But you also have all this technology available to you. You got things right. I see this all the time, especially with real estate agents. They'll have this huge suite of technology and not use hardly any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going to have to do a little bit of we do a what's called a resource assessment.
Yes.
Right? So we do we put it in four, put a square, right, and cut it into four, and then you've got required and have, right? So have, we don't have, required, not required, and then you put
Mm-hmm.
it on a graph. You're going to end up with 4 blocks. One is going to be things that are required and that we have. Well, those things we're going to protect.
Right.
Right? I'm sorry, we're going to prioritize. Like that's the big deal, right? Um, the ones that are we don't have, so it's a resource we want to have, we just don't have it yet, but it's our goals require it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to plan for those things, right? We're going to make
Right.
a plan to get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are things we have and they're not required for us to get where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
We purge those.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, my preacher's coming out because it's all alliterated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then things we don't have and the things we don't need or that aren't required, well, those we're going to protect ourselves from, which could be endless, right?
Correct.
Um, but we need to sit down and look at what are the resources we have, what do we don't have. I would venture to tell you that most of the time, people that when an individual sits down and really works on this, they have more resources than they realize.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Step into it, own it. What could you do to leverage it, use it? Right? You speak English, fantastic. It's the language of commerce, my friend.
Right. I think what the other part of this is a lot of this framework is you can use it in your personal life, and it's not just for business or just for your company or whatever. When you think about when you were talking about that immediately, I thought SWOT analysis. People that are successful, couples that are successful, businesses that are successful, they take the time to look, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, where are the threats, where are the things that we need to protect ourselves from, just like what you said. And we can apply that. And when we take the time to break it down, we can put distance between us and the threat. And on the spiritual side, it's us and the enemy, right? I need to look at my spiritual life and see, where do I have a threat? Where am I strong? Where am I weak? And where do I need to grow? So all these things can be applied to every area of your life. And thank you all for coming in, and please ask any questions that you like as we're going through and getting into the mechanics of it all. So I'll turn it back over to you, Spencer.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. When you get into at this point, right now, we've got our purpose. We're beginning to get our priorities in place. We know what they are, and now we step into our power by holding our resources accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which, by the way, things like a budget, a calendar, like these are tools that you would use to step into your power. It's amazing how much more effective we become when we step into our tools or our accountability, because now
Mm-hmm.
I understand, wow, there's a lot more time in the day than I was thinking. I was just kind of going through the motions.
Exactly.
Right? So that's very powerful for people most of the time. Not to mention, I'll give you another example. I got an insurance company. They got these really robust technology, and had not actually set up a way to measure the their production properly. They knew how much was coming in, but they couldn't break it down per producer,
Mm-hmm.
per that kind of thing. Even though the technology had it there, right? So that's all we had to do, and now we hold our technology accountable. We print reports, and now we can have these conversations with all the
Mm-hmm.
producers. How are you? This is where you're at, and this is how we can help you improve.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause these are the standards, and this
Right.
is what the measurements are telling us now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a mechanical piece of the puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at this point, now that I'm measuring and I'm keeping up with it, and then maybe I should probably pull in the conversation around other parts of your life. This is true for your health,
Correct.
right? So how much time am I giving to it?
Mm-hmm.
Spencer, I'm just not really an athletic person. I didn't say you had to become an athlete, but my happy ass was out running today and it was not comfortable.
Right.
Okay. I don't have a runner's frame, but I've committed to a 5K.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a plan that I got from Nike Run Club. And then I'm now accountable based off of the time and the things that I'm doing to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm eating, what I'm doing, right? So there's a whole assessment piece here of my resources.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
From there, we can start talking about performance now. Everybody wants to talk about performance. Like, how do I perform at the highest level?
Right.
The mechanics of performance is all about systems. Now, I use the word systems most of the time because I'm usually talking to business owners. But look at it this way, and this might be a little bit easier. It's kind of like um, it's really just nothing more than a habit. What a habit is to you as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
a system is to the business.
Correct.
It's anything that you're not having to think about. It's
Mm-hmm.
automatic,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for instance, I believe might have been Frida. She's the one. They're one of the ones that just came in a little bit ago. Ordered a book last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a system for that. The email went out. Then I'm gonna right. I get a notification. Then I got to take the book and go down to the post office. Got to sign the
Right.
book and send it out with everything that comes along with it.
Right.
Right? There's a system for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a system or something that happens automatically every time, then it's not gonna be very organized. And you're not gonna be able to operate at the highest level.
Correct.
So going to another insurance company, I had a guy that he was phenomenal at mindset, and he was a sales manager. And I'm telling you, the boy could sell some insurance. Like people would just. The problem was it was very hard to duplicate, and this is a mistake that a lot of leadership makes too. They find people that are super talented that don't know how to actually like document how they do it,
Exactly.
and they just say, "Oh, you are definitely. We want you to, and we want everybody to be just like you."
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to tell you that person's not going to probably be good at documenting how they do it unless somebody walks them through it.
Correct.
Right. So that's what I did here with this particular insurance company. It was like nails on a chalkboard. It was terrible for him, but we began to document how he answered the phone, what
Mm-hmm.
questions he went through, what questions
Mm-hmm.
he was asking, right? All those types of things. And then what was his quote process and how often and what was, right? All of that kind of stuff. We started measuring it all, documenting it all. And
Mm-hmm.
now we began to train people on how to do that.
Right.
Magically, the numbers go up.
Yes.
It's not magic. We just know that people don't think that they can, that's something that needs to be done. They think it's just natural.
But in order to rinse and repeat, to duplicate the same success, you have to have what is also known as your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, and how to do a thing. And that even goes in ministry, in business, your life. What is the standard that we're going to do this every time to duplicate our success?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do we make this duplicatable? It really is just nothing more than like writing a recipe. But the problem is that we understand it from a perspective of trying to cook something,
Right.
right? Here's all the ingredients. You got to do it in this order, and it's got to be a certain way. Everybody understands that conceptually, but
Mm-hmm.
if you know someone that's super talented at customer service and they know how to diffuse a situation pretty well, right? They're really good at that kind of thing. You just assume that that's a natural skill that they have,
Right.
like it's just something that they were born with. Well, maybe it was, and maybe that's true, but that doesn't mean that I can't duplicate it.
Mm-hmm.
So in a business, if I'm going to have a business, I've got to build systems, right? Not to mention that people are looking for predictability,
Yes.
right? They want to know what they're going to get from your business.
Mm-hmm.
And if every time they go to something a little bit different, they're gonna get a little sideways about it. They're like, I can't really trust the situation,
Right.
right? And the only reason why you won't set systems up is because you don't trust yourself.
Ooh. Now, see that part right there. That part.
We talked about this last week. I don't know if you
We
remember.
did. No, we did. And it hit home even then because we talked about how we don't make commitments because we let ourselves down. It's that self accountability. We've told ourselves, you know what, on Monday, I'm gonna start the diet. I'm gonna stop eating bread on Monday. And then it's the next Monday. Then it's the next Monday. And then we 6 months down the line because we make these commitments to ourselves that we don't hold on to.
Yeah, we've made statements of interest. We hope that we'll start
Correct.
on Monday, right? We've never fully committed.
Wow, that was good.
And then people think big things like, how I'm going to start eating or changing something really
Mm-hmm.
big like a diet. It could literally be something as simple as man, little tiny things.
You talked about waking up 10 minutes earlier
Yeah,
each
yeah.
day.
I'm gonna, or don't let me step on anybody's toes, but maybe the Lord has told you that you should probably go help in this part of the ministry at the church, but you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I would like to, I want to, I'm going to, and then you constantly avoid it.
Right.
When you're constantly avoiding, you're basically telling your unconscious or subconscious part of your mind that you don't actually mean what you say.
Mm.
And I can't trust myself for that reason. And by the way, nobody really, I mean, it shows in our life in different places, but it's not like anybody looks into your brain. Only the Lord can see that kind of thing going on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nobody looks at your face and goes, "Oh, you planned to get up 30 minutes earlier this morning and you didn't, did you?" Right?
Right. Right.
Um, this is a self conversation, and I'll tell you, the people that run the world are the ones that understand how to operate the machinery, right? The three
Right.
pounds of matter in between your ears that God gave you.
Right. But to your point, and I'm gonna let you go ahead. People won't see the commitment that you made to yourself, but they will see the results of the commitment.
Sure, sure. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons why we are naturally willing to listen to someone who's physically fit. I know that somebody they're like, "Oh, Spencer," but you know what I mean, right? These guys,
Because in their
and look,
mind, it's discipline. This person is disciplined.
yeah, you can't see it. You can't see me, but I'm not optimal either. But if I see a man that's like not necessarily all jacked up, but you just they look clean and they
Mm-hmm.
cut and they take care of their clothes. It doesn't even have to be
Mm-hmm.
just their health, but their clothes and the
Mm-hmm.
way they dress and they act and do. It automatically signals to me that they keep their own promises
Mm-hmm.
and they're
It's
probably
that
going to do
visual
for me.
credibility.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, it gives visual credibility. Absolutely. So, how someone is kept and how someone takes care of themselves, right? My grandfather used to say from the pulpit, if the barn door needs painting, paint it. He was talking about, makeup. It's just, right? But, how well you take care of yourself does say a lot.
It
And,
does.
and look, we talk about this in the Unshakeable Weekend event. There's 5 areas of life, and there's a hierarchy with it, meaning the one above it always influences or will impact the one below it, and then the one below it could influence the one above it. So if you wrote down these 5 words this way: spiritual at the top,
Mm-hmm.
then health,
Mm-hmm.
then relationship,
Mm-hmm.
then career,
Mm-hmm.
then financial,
Right.
right? So my spiritual life is going to dictate how my health is going to go because it tells me how I'm going to relate to myself. How I relate to my spiritual life
Mm-hmm.
tells me how to relate with my health,
Right.
me, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Mm-hmm.
And how I relate to myself is going to dictate and impact how I relate to others in relationship,
Correct.
right? So if I'm lazy with myself, I'm probably going to be lazy with other people too,
Ooh.
right? And then we're talking about systems here. I know we're getting off
But
track a
this
little
is
bit,
no, no, we on track. This is good. It's helping somebody.
but this is the reality of the whole thing, right? So, and then my relationships, right? Somebody says, well, how does that work with career? Because that, does my relationship actually impact my career? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does. Because I can tell you right now, every time I had a significant leap in my career, it was always because I knew how to have good relationships with the right people.
Exactly.
I don't care. When I was 17 years old, I was an assistant kitchen manager of a Shoney's. If anybody even knows what Shoney's is today, right? 17. I was making $650 a week, which was a lot of money for me back in the 90s
Mm-hmm.
as a 17-year-old. How? I started off as an assistant bar. I got to help keep the breakfast bar
Mm-hmm.
stocked, right? I went from that to assistant kitchen manager, 17. I'm bossing around these, adult people in the back.
Mm-hmm.
That happened because I had a relationship with the general manager. I did it in security. I did it at the RV dealership. I've done it everywhere I've ever been because of the ability to relate. Who you know, how to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
relating to other people will in fact dictate how far you go with your career. Oh, Spencer, I'm an engineer. You still got HR to deal with.
You do. You still have a team to deal with. You still have to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the level of expansion, right, as far out as you go is going to be dependent upon whether or not you know how to relate with people. And it doesn't matter what part of the business we're talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? All I do is work on a computer and write code. I don't have to deal with people.
No.
True, but then again, when you get really good, if you're only going to get so far unless you know how to lead a team of
Correct.
engineers.
Correct. That's
Right.
right.
So again, your relational aptitude is going to impact whether or not what kind of career level you get to. And
Mm-hmm.
then your career is obviously going to be a vehicle or it's going to impact your finances
Correct.
because your career is really nothing more than how you bring value to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates your finances. Now I can overlay those five with the five in the business
Right.
because spiritual is the same as what I call excellence, which is the culture of
Yes.
your business
Mm-hmm.
for what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, that's going to impact the health, or in the business, that's your sales or exposure.
Right.
So if you're wanting to, that's going to dictate my exposure, right? What am I doing for my overall health of the business? And then the health of the business, the sales in the business is going to drive the customer service or the experience.
Could
To
it
keep it
also
up.
be related to the brand?
It all completely depends on the excellence, right? What's the
Right.
culture?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to dictate my sales. That's going to dictate, or exposure, which is going to dictate my experience, meaning my customer service experience. How do people interact? That's relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the experience will impact your expertise. How well do you know what you're doing?
Correct.
Sharpening your skills, that kind of thing. Same as
Mm-hmm.
career. How do you bring value to the marketplace? And then the last one is executive, which is essentially, the leadership piece of management, guiding, creating plans, doing all this stuff, right? Measuring budgets and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's, if you're listening to this right now and you're getting a little bit like, oh gosh, that's so confusing, so much stuff, and I don't know really. At the end of the day, at this point, do you know what your committed outcome is? Like, what are we working towards?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a plan for that?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't got a plan for it, then don't worry about the rest of what I'm talking about right now. It's all about the plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? maybe you have a plan, you've been working on it, and you have, now do you have your resources under control? Do you have a budget? Do you have a calendar? Do you have a, right? How are you tracking all of this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing all of those things, then naturally you're going to start wanting to organize or document how you're doing and what's the rhythm. It's another way of looking at this: the rhythm, the system, the process.
Mm-hmm.
How do I show up in all five of these areas,
Mm-hmm.
personally and professionally?
So this is the difference between the hope side and the committed side.
Mm-hmm.
Because the committed side has to do all this stuff behind the scenes to prepare out of expectation for what it is that you want. And I'm loving this conversation for me personally, because I was having, my quiet time this morning. And it was, you have to have your structure prepared behind the scenes. And I'm thinking about my business. In order to scale, you don't wait until you get big to add and implement. You set the stage for it to grow in its process. So you have to have been prepared and have the structure that's necessary. If you're believing for $1 million business, you structure yourself, even if you haven't made the first $1,000 yet. You structure your business for the growth out of the expectation of it. You structure your life for the growth and the expectation of it. You prepare your finances, your savings. You so that you can duplicate your success along the way. Because if you're
Mm-hmm.
just hoping for it, you're not going to put any structure to it. But if you're really expecting it, you're putting systems in place for it to grow and for it to be scalable so that you can get to exactly where it is that you want to go. This is so good for me. So keep going. I'm good.
Well, if you think about it, I think we all have lived somewhere where they're trying to build, like, widen the highway because they
You,
didn't expect the
Horace
growth.
Travel Road.
I happen to know where that they're still working on it, huh?
Orange cones everywhere. It's
Like
the
for
most
like
ridiculous thing
over
ever.
a decade now, they've been working on.
It's been literally 10 years. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
but the thing is that that area continues to grow, and so it's like, should we make it even bigger? Do we need to reach
Right.
it, right? And so that's the problem you have when you put a 2-lane road down to manage your little bit of business, and you think you're going to be able to do. You can't. What's going to happen if you don't build the infrastructure? That's the word you're looking for. The
Yes.
infrastructure for a large business or a better life, right? The healthy eating habits or the
Correct.
better relationship. If you don't build the infrastructure big enough, you're going to end up with an accordion effect, which is
Yes.
what happens when we have why we get so inconsistent. We've all
Mhm.
been in these situations. I-95 in South Carolina sucks for this very reason,
Mhm.
because in Georgia and in North Carolina it's 3 lanes, but when you
Mhm.
come to South Carolina it's bottlenecked into 2. And what happens is everybody goes fast for a while, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden it backs up and like everybody slows down. And then
Right.
the front of that line gets going. And then finally you get going again. And then somebody up there causes everything to slow back down. And then you come
Mhm.
almost to a stop. And it's like this thing going
Right.
all the way down the interstate is the biggest pain in the rear end. That's what happens with your business when you don't build the infrastructure wide enough, big enough
Mhm.
to manage that level of activity.
Yes. That's good.
Systems, got to have
Mhm.
them. Processes, right? What is the process? And guys, sometimes people listen to this kind of thing and they think, oh, I got to have this really ornate situation. Truthfully, it could be something as simple as a checklist.
Yes. A Google Doc. That's it.
Yeah, for some people it's just a checklist to write down. So like every time this somebody orders this, I do these 5 things,
Mhm.
period. Can you hand it to somebody else and they know what to do?
Exactly.
It's a system, it's a rhythm.
Mhm.
Then we can tweak that. So at this point now we're going to start talking about progress, because you're going to, maybe you're in a rhythm and you've got some of these things in place, right? So the only last piece of the mechanics here now is feedback. Now sometimes I use the word optimization.
That's very nice,
Why are you laughing?
because a lot of people when you say feedback, it can sound so harsh and negative because they only think that it is for negative responses or constructive criticism. And oftentimes feedback can also be for the great things that you're doing. I'm giving you feedback on the progress that you made, and maybe the other word would be recognition,
Mm.
right? But feedback is truly a gift because it gives you the tools to work through the things that need a little bit of help.
All right, I'm going to drop something. You guys, if you guys are taking notes, I'm going to tell you something. Champions, okay? The flexible champion values the truth
Yes.
way more than they do validation.
Write that
Champions they value truth more than validation. I don't need you to tell me that I did something right. Because here's another truth that I just literally just recently started thinking about. I've been mulling all this over. You do realize, by the way, this book is going to turn into about 4 different books because there's a whole bunch of stuff in this.
Oh, it is.
The Oh, it just slipped. Hold on. It'll come back to me. Champions value the truth more than they do validation. It was almost there. I'm just so embarrassing when this kind of thing happens to me. It'll come back. It'll come back. I promise. We want to be validated.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go. There's no such thing as whether it's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. We spend way too much time worried about whether something is right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. When it comes to this stuff, it's either going to be effective or ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
It's either relevant or irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come to it with that kind of frame of mind, maybe I didn't do the most effective thing and I want to get better because the truth is more important to me. I'm committed to an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Making sense?
It does.
Feedback is the breakfast of champions.
It is.
If you know anyone that's really wanting to grow, if you're going to make progress and not plateau, you're going to need to be able to start paying attention to the things that are not working as well as you thought they should.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a really good example, Erica. I have for a year now. Actually, I'm on episode 94. Okay, so I've only missed like once or twice in the whole year. Every week, Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I go live in my little group over at unshakeablegroup.com, and that has not gotten the traction I want it to. So guess what I'm going to do? Based off of the what I see what you're doing here with this technology, we're going to take it. I'm going to plug it there, but now it's going to go live stream on YouTube and it's going to go live stream on LinkedIn, so that we can syndicate and just set it all out all at once, simulcast basically.
Yes.
Right. And I'll get more traction that way. Because I don't need to get my feelings hurt that people didn't want to come to this private Facebook group just to hear Spencer rant. Right? It ain't about me. That's the other thing too. Sometimes all this stuff isn't about you.
Exactly.
It's about the outcome. And if you're solid on why you're doing what you're doing, adjustments aren't going to be the problem.
No.
Right? So feedback really comes down to a little cycle. It's planning, execution, feedback. Right?
Okay.
So we're going to be this is what we're going to do this week. We go and do that thing, and then we get the feedback, and then we bring that back to our planning. So what's the adjustment, right? Now we do this with a process we call the wrap session. Have I mentioned wrap sessions to you yet?
No, you haven't.
I felt like I thought I did, but I guess I haven't, right? So wrap sessions is WRAP, weekly results and planning.
Oh, that's good.
Wrap sessions, and I have a wrap sheet, right? It's kind of cute and funny to say it that way. I have a rap sheet, right? But my rap sheet is basically a document that allows me to maintain my focus on what are the outcomes that I'm having in different areas. And then what am I doing for this coming month? to make
Mhm.
progress towards those outcomes. And then each week I revisit, and I have 5 weeks across the bottom. And then I say, I'm going to do, this week to make progress toward this monthly outcome.
Mhm.
I'm going to make progress doing this. I'm going to make this many calls. I got to schedule this. I got to get that
Mhm.
set up. I got to build this thing. I got it right. And every week it's a rhythm. It's a process. It's a
Mhm.
system for me to consistently maintain the feedback
Mhm.
because I can follow the numbers from there.
Mhm.
Here's what I can tell you. If you have been operating in your life and in your business and you're constantly frustrated, right? Frustration is like your go-to emotion.
Mhm.
There's a strong chance that you're leaning too much on mindset, and everything I've talked about tonight is what you need.
That's good.
Because frustration usually is harbored in a situation where it's possible, you got all the mindset pieces, you're probably taking some action, you're all over the place, and you got the passion, all that kind of stuff. All we got to do, it's not complicated. You just got to slow you down long enough to marry it to some very specific mechanical pieces.
Mhm.
What's the outcome? Let's commit to it. You got the mindset for commitment. Let's commit to something specific.
Mhm.
And then what's your plan? Write it out and don't make it complicated.
Right.
By the way, 5 to 9 max in terms of items.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we could spend a whole hour talking about chunking, by the way, and how your mind chunks information.
Oh yes. Oh, I believe in time blocking the whole. Yes, all of that.
Well,
Yes.
chunking, let me give you a quick little version of it. We don't have time to go
Mhm.
through it, but we naturally chunk information.
Mhm.
And some of us chunk big and some of us chunk small. Okay? The reason our phone numbers are broken into 3s and 4s is so that we can remember them.
Mhm.
But if it was a 10-digit number all in one thing, it would be kind of hard to remember, right?
Mhm.
We have to have the numbers broken up that way so that they're chunked in a way that our brain will be able to hold on to it.
Mhm.
Okay. The sweet spot is 7 plus or minus 2.
Right.
So if I said, hey, Erica, name all the male actors you can think of right now, you would
Mhm.
come out the gate and we'd all watch your eyes and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And depending on how well you know male actors, somewhere around 5 and 6 or so, maybe even up to 8 or 9, your
Mhm.
eyes will go up and to the left and you'll have to start thinking, right? You'll have to do some long range memory stuff and pull that to the front because, oh, so and so starred in that movie, but he had a co-actor. What was his name, right? You'll
Mhm.
do that kind of thing to get past 7, 8, maybe 9.
Right.
Okay. On any given subject, we can only really retain on what, like your computer has RAM, random access memory.
Mhm.
It can only contain about 7 plus or minus 2, so between 5 and 9 on any
Mhm.
given subject.
Mhm.
So the problem is that people have a habit of chunking either really big or chunking really, really small. So what
Mhm.
that looks like is if I said, what does it take for you to be successful in your particular career? You might say, it's easy. Just make X number of calls, close X number of deals, and you give me like 2 or 3 really big things.
Right.
Well, the problem is when you chunk that big, you will you'll make it simple
Mhm.
and you oversimplify it, which then causes you to kick the can down the road because you can get started at any point, but you never do. And
Right.
then a few months down the road, you get frustrated with yourself because if it's that simple, why can't I ever seem to get it going? And then you go down this downward spiral till eventually you hit bottom, and then you pull yourself by the bootstraps again. You say, okay, all I got to do is, and then you say these 3 things.
Mhm.
You got to break it down a little bit further and have a plan that's going to help you get there, right?
Mhm.
So it needs to have at least 5 things if you chunk big, typically. I think of a lot of the people are thinking a little bit more small chunk, and they're gonna like, what does it take to be successful in your career? Well, you got to have this,
Mhm.
and they just start doing this huge amount of information. It's way past 9,
Mhm.
right? 10, 11, 15, 25, 30 items. Got to do all these things. Time out, buddy. Take a break. So those people, I tell them to do a data dump.
Yeah.
Take a piece of paper, a pad of paper, dump it all on paper, and then group those items right into
Mm.
5 to 9 categories,
Right.
and then re-ask yourself the question: what is it I'm really after in this particular category?
Yes.
Now I have a plan. So if the issue was the plan, right? Make sure you're chunking in the appropriate amount, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
If you have that kind of stuff, then maybe you just need to have you done a budget? Do you know where your money goes? Right? What
Mm-hmm.
about your schedule? Have you kept up with your schedule? Right? You get the tools in place, the resources. What do you have? And then get into the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Be systematic about it. Be habitual about it. By the way, extraordinary people do what the ordinary people do all of the time, not some of the time.
That's good. Ooh, really? That's
There's
good.
nothing extra about them. They just do what
Right.
ordinary people wouldn't do all of the time.
They just continue to duplicate it and that they're consistent and they do it over and over again.
That's
That's
right.
good.
Right. And then feedback. Just follow the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
There's no failure if you're following feedback,
Mm-hmm.
because as long as you're learning from it, it's not a failure.
It's not.
That's the problem, is that most of us are labeling it as a failure. I did this thing and I didn't get the result. It's a failure.
Mm-mm.
No, it's feedback. So if it's feedback, it's telling you to make an adjustment. That's all.
So why is it that you believe, and I know we're almost up on our time, that some people don't go deeper into the question? Because yes, it may quote unquote be a failure or we didn't execute at a particular level. It's still a result. And you still should analyze the result. Even your wins, you should analyze the result and see what was it that allowed us to win so that we can rinse and repeat. And if you did have a failure, where did we miss so that we can avoid doing it again? So why do you think some people don't like to, they just say, oh, it just didn't work and just leave it instead of digging deeper into it to figure out why and what could be done differently?
I am honestly, as simple as this sounds, we've already said it a couple times. If you have no commitment to it, then you're not going to really dig into it.
Okay.
Um, when you're committed, you're going to have a different perspective around that quote failure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm not getting closer to my outcome and I've committed to this outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other thing is that we also, as a society, I think I mentioned this probably the first night when I talk about disturbance, usually I point out that we are, as a society, like to stay numb. We don't want to feel disturbed, and we don't want to get the dark stuff, right? Whether it's, I think we label things as anxiety that shouldn't be labeled as anxiety. Now there's a real thing as in anxiety. So don't come at me in the internet, guys. Okay. I do believe that there are people that have an
Mhm.
anxiety that does can grip you. I also know the same thing for depression, but those are, honestly, we use those words way too comfortably for things that are not actually, like, if you're feeling a little anxious, right? I had to get up and sing, Riverland Hills Baptist Church.
Mhm.
Yeah. Easter Sunday, 2 services. I sang a solo. I was a little anxious.
All right. You will. I get it.
I was a little anxious, like 1,500 people in that auditorium,
Mhm.
right? I'm a little anxious. It's Easter Sunday. Everyone's in their
Mhm.
best, right?
Mhm.
Um, but being anxious and saying I have anxiety, right?
Right.
It modulates the difference on the level of emotion you bring to it.
Mhm.
So, but people immediately, things that are just making you a little anxious, now we want to avoid those things too, because we've
Mhm.
already lumped it into being some high level problem.
Right.
Same for the depression thing. You can be down and not be depressed.
Mhm.
I'm just, I'm not feeling it right now. I'm feeling out. I'm just down. Well, is that depression? Doesn't have
Mhm.
to be. You might just be feeling down.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about the feedback and the failures and not going in deep enough, it's because I think most of us in America, especially, we're just constantly insulating ourselves to stay away from anything that is perceived as uncomfortable.
That's good. So one of the things that I want to wrap up with that's at the back of the book, and hopefully you all, I want to put this back up so you will have it. You have an opportunity to get this book for free, and it's an amazing book. I'm telling you, it's so much in here, and I definitely want you to get on Spencer's mailing list because you have, what's the name of your event again?
Unshakable weekend
The
event.
Unshakable Weekend event. So when you think about all of what we talked about, and it's a lot, we didn't even really dig deep into every part of it. When you think about the momentum, the mindset, and the mechanics, he really didn't get into all of it. But what he left us with was a lot to take with us over the last 3 weeks. But at the end of your book, as well as in the book, you have places where you can actually write your answers and really make the necessary commitments that you need to make for the progress that you're looking for. There is what he put in here called the Unshakable Code that is in the back of the book. So, Spencer, I want you to go through the Unshakable Code as we get ready to wrap up and leave everyone with the power of the Unshakable Code.
Unshakable code. So, um, drift to drive, when it's referencing the momentum, my dreams are possible. My desires are rooted in my values. My disturbances are fuel. My decisions make it all more probable. By the way, it's a nice little loop there because it goes from possible to probable, if you notice that.
It does.
Um, as it pertains to mastery or the qualified champions portion, I am purposeful by my commitment to the outcome. I am prioritized by focusing on the standards. I am powerful through accountability for my resources. I am performing at my best by believing in my habits and systems. And then finally, I am progressing through flexibility in my improvements.
This is great. So, for you, if you have not been with us for the last couple of weeks, Spencer went through and broke down what each one of these mean in the last 2 weeks. Please go back and watch it while we do have it up. Spencer and I are going to talk. I'm thinking about taking this last 3 sessions and putting it on a vault because it's so much information. Because he charges for on a weekend, an unshakable weekend. He charges for all this information and he gave it to us for free. And I value anyone's intellectual property, right? And we'll talk about it and figure out what we need to leave up, what we may need to take down. But most people charge thousands for the information that we have received over the last 3 weeks. And I so out of our relationship so grateful that you have taken the time to share out of what you teach, out of this amazing book that you have put here and the Unshakable Weekend that you have helped thousands of people in many different industries, mostly in real estate, to make millions of dollars with this information that you shared with us today. So I just really appreciate you coming on Evolve and Elevate with Erica and sharing it with the different platforms that I have put it on and allowed us to get this information, which most people don't necessarily get it like this. So I greatly appreciate it. So Spencer, thank you again. And is there anything else that you want to leave us with as we have rounded out momentum and mastery for the last 3 weeks?
My admonition for everyone is to get clear on what you want, why you want it. Get consistent. Build the processes and the things in your life that'll help you become way more consistent, because that's where joy comes in. And then get cultivated, meaning constantly spend time on making yourself better, being around the right people that feed into you. Get clear, get consistent, and get cultivated.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. So please, Spencer, as you are making your decision when you're going to do your next Unshakable Weekend, let us know so that we can rally the troops and get them down to Florida. If that's where you're going to have it, we'll
Yeah,
be.
the next one probably will be in Jacksonville, Florida. So
Oh,
it's
I love Jacksonville.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just a little ride down.
Yeah, we're gonna probably Jacksonville, but I want to find. By the way, if anybody's listening to this and they're like, I'd love to have it where I'm at. Well, reach out to me. And if you own a business and you're trying to figure out how to get it going, or you want to know if there's a way for us to work together, when you go to spencercombs.com, there's a tab there that says "Start Here." That's a place for you to schedule a time to meet with me. and then we'll do a quick evaluation. It doesn't take me long, by the way. I'm very quick at getting to the heart of an issue. So reach out.
Awesome. So you all please connect with Spencer. Make sure you go to spencercombs.com/text,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets their text message each day.
Mm-hmm.
So you can stay connected that way. You have an opportunity to get a free book. Of course, you pay shipping and handling. It's an amazing book. I bought mine straight off Amazon.
You paid
So,
too much.
being the host, I wanted to make sure that I read the book. So I didn't want to wait. So I went ahead and got my copy, but I'm so glad that I did. One, to support, and two, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I'm so grateful for the relationship. So, you all, I pray that you all will continue to connect with Spencer. Thank you all for being a part of Evolve and Elevate with Erica tonight, as we have been talking about momentum and mastery for the last 3 weeks, which has been absolutely phenomenal. We greatly appreciate you being here with us, and we pray it was as good for you as it was for us. You all have the most amazing weekend. Be on the lookout for some other wonderful guests that I'm going to be having here for the month of November. I've got some great goodies that are coming forward. And how this came about, I put out a call, and I'm going to do it again for those who would like to be a part of Evolve and Elevate, and you would like to be a guest. I want to take this copy of this real quick. And if you would like to be a guest, just go to this link right here and fill out the form. We will have a conversation so that we can connect, and you can be a part of the conversation here, because my heart for this platform is for all of us to be better, be it in business, in our personal life, in our relationships, and our careers, so that we can evolve and elevate and be our best, highest self, to give God all of the glory. So I thank you all for being here with us tonight. You all have a most amazing week, and we will talk